So I didn't go on a date in 10 years. I had a big career. I was busy. I was managing bands. I was starting tech companies. I was focusing on everything except for finding a partner. But I wanted a family. I wanted to be a mum, and I didn't want to be alone for the rest of my life.
So what would you date?
I don't know, honestly. I think I was just scared. Anyway, I decided to change, and I made a resolution: one date every week for an entire year. It was so hard. I dated for 3 years straight. In the end, I dated 138 different men.
And what happened?
I got my heart broken, I got humiliated, but I wrote a book about it.
What, for people who are looking for a relationship?
Not just people who are looking for a relationship, but I think if you're looking for a relationship, it'll be super useful. But there is so much more that I learned. I learned about myself, I learned for my career and my business, I learned about relationships with my friends. Now my relationship Hello and welcome to Love in Lockdown. I'm Rebecca Campbell. This is our final event. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are all meeting on today. I know we have people joining us from New Zealand, right across Australia. So I want to acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands in which we're all on today and their elders past and present. I also want to acknowledge that a lot of our community are on their own at the moment and are in lockdown. So it has been a really tough time for many of our community. So I just wanted to start by acknowledging that as well. If you've been to our other 3 events, tonight is slightly different. Our other 3 events, we've talked all about dating and relationships. And tonight we're still going to talk about dating and forming new relationships. But we're also going to talk about being single and what is it like being single at the moment? How can we look after ourselves? And also, what is singledom likely to look like going forward in the future? We have 3 awesome, really interesting, different guests tonight. So we have Jenny Leong MP, who will explain how this came about, but was instrumental in bringing about the singles bubble in New South Wales, and Melanie Tait, who is a former ABC journalist, now author, playwright, advocate, and also had a lot to do with advocating for the Sydney singles bubble, and clinical psychologist Gemma Gilchrist. So we have, it's really interesting. We'll have a really interesting chat tonight. The Q&A is going, so please, if you have questions, put your questions in the Q&A and we'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. We've left a bit more time for questions tonight. And also we have the chat going. The chat has been awesome the last 3 weeks, so please use the chat to chat and meet new people. I want to give a big thanks to RSVP for putting this series together. I know they got feedback from the community that they really wanted to come together at this time and learn, and have done, I think, everyone a great service by helping put these events together. So thank you very much to them. If you want to check out the other 3 events, we're going to put a link in the chat to the videos of the other 3 webinars, which have been focused more on dating and relationships. We've had some awesome academics. Last week we had Trudy Gilbert, Australia's top matchmaker, talking about what to do on a first date, or the feedback she gets after first dates, some like golden tips. But I want to start tonight by introducing Melanie Tait first. So Melanie, you may have seen on the media recently, you may have seen in the media for a whole lot of different reasons, but Mel, you are a Sydney single, and you noticed the need for a bubble for you to be able to meet, or singles to be able to meet with others. And you were one of the people who advocated very loudly for this. So I want to ask you about that in a minute. But first of all, I just want to ask you your experience of being single during this lockdown. How is it different?
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me. I'm coming to you tonight from Gadigal land. And yes, my experience of being single in Sydney during lockdown, it's a funny thing. I found it really difficult to be honest, through both lockdowns. I'm somebody who normally, I live alone with my 2 little dogs, and I have a really full social life. Although I mainly work at home anyway, whether it's lockdown or not, my life is really populated by going to the theatre and meeting up with friends for coffees during the day, or working from the beautiful Marrickville Library, all over the place, working all over the place. And so I guess being single and dating as well, the occasional date, depending on how devoted I am to the cause at the time. So I actually found it really difficult to have all of those social things shut down. I was at home alone constantly, like everybody. And I was actually really grateful for the single bubble campaign to sort of bring me out of that slump, actually, because I was starting to, like all those things that start to happen when you're alone a little bit too long, how you get out of bed a little bit too late, and maybe you have your shower a bit late in the day, or maybe you have it at night when you're normally a morning person, that sort of thing. So I wasn't the greatest single person before the bubble came along in lockdown. I was really struggling.
So I first came across you. I mean, I know that I have known you through, your work as a journalist, but I first came across you and your work that you were doing advocating for the singles bubble through Twitter. I think it was Dave from RSVP, when we were talking about these events and who would be interesting to have on the events. He sent me, a screenshot of your Twitter account calling for a singles bubble. And then I know that you set up a change.org campaign. Can you just tell us a bit about how that worked and how did it come about?
Sure. So from the get-go, from the second that we were put into lockdown, I just felt this is really going to be difficult if we're all alone all the time. So as well as those things I mentioned before, just a really simple part of my day-to-day life is I live very close to my little niece and nephew, who are 1 and 6, nearly 1 and nearly 6. And I see them every day, and they're a really big part of my emotional life. And suddenly I just, couldn't see any of my family. And I started at 11 o'clock, usually at about 10 minutes to 11 before the press conference would start. I started to tweet, "Can we please have a single bubble?" I would do it like, I'd fill up all my characters with, "Can we please have a single bubble?" and, tag COVID New South Wales or something. And I think having been in the media for a really long time, I don't have a lot of followers. I think I've got about 8,000 or something, but those 8,000, I guess, because I've been in media for a long time, the people that do follow me are kind of connected to media, so that got out. And then not long after that, Jenny, which I'm sure Jenny will talk about, probably around the same time, Jenny and Alex Greenwich put together, sent a letter. I recall, started campaigning for it in government. And around that time, when it was just starting to sort of gather speed, the Guardian asked me to write a op-ed about what it was like living in a single bubble, which I did. And just after that, one of my friends, the writer Linda Javen, got in touch with me and said, "I really loved your op-ed. Are you going to do a change.org? You need to do a change.org campaign and take this to Wales government and make it happen." And I thought about it overnight, and I was really anxious about doing that. For a start, until 3 years ago, I was an ABC journalist. And that dies hard, even though I haven't, I've not been with the ABC for years. I was also worried nobody would sign it. I was worried nobody would care. I was worried people would start attacking me about the spread of the virus. But luckily they didn't. I put the campaign on, got lots of support from Nick Hollis at change.org. And I think, we had the politicians like Jenny and Alex Greenwich, and I think Victor Dominello was another one campaigning for it. And I think the groundswell happened, and thank goodness we ended up getting it. It was such a surprise. I didn't think we'd get it for a good few weeks until after we did, actually. I expected it to be a lot longer a campaign, and it wasn't. Jenny can probably speak to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your work. We're going to come to the impact that this has had on you in a minute. I want to bring on Jenny now. So Jenny, you are, one of the people who, along with Alex Greenwich, who Melanie mentioned before, actually lobbied from the inside for a change to the health order. Could you tell us, what was behind, what were you hearing before this change was put in place?
Yeah.
What impact has it had?
Thanks so much, Rebecca, and thank you for having us for this chat. It's so wonderful to be able to connect with everyone. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming in from Gadigal land as well, the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to really just start off by saying one of the things that this pandemic has shown, and just hearing Melanie reflect back on it, is that you just cannot predict what is going to be picked up as a thing that you can win, or as a thing that will change, or something that will be implemented that you just don't understand. Like if there was ever a time in politics and in society where it's very difficult to predict how things will play out, this is that thing. And so I remember it was, we're talking like mid-July, basically. A local resident got in touch with us by email, and I remember distinctly the conversation we had at our team meeting in the morning. We have a check-in between our electorate office staff, and someone was like, Jenny, you got to handle this one. And that usually means we don't have a clear policy on it, we don't have a clear position on it, and we're not really sure where we take it. And it was basically saying, can we be pushing for a singles bubble like Victoria? And at the time, there were these real concerns about not wanting to push into this anti-lockdown sentiment, not wanting to put people at risk, but at the same time recognizing the complete lack of logic. And sorry if I'm being crude here, but there was this bizarre situation where you could go to someone's house and have sex, but you couldn't go to someone's house and have a cup of coffee with them. And so there was this bizarre concept where it's like, hang on, there is actually an issue here around the risks to people's health, the risks in terms of infection, and the need to address issues of social isolation. And the health minister recognised that early on, and he was saying, oh, but there's compassionate grounds and these things. But as everyone identified, that is seen as something that was very much like if people are in crisis. And what we were sort of thinking is we don't want to get people to crisis in terms of isolation and mental health issues before they can have a friend come and visit. We want them to be looked after before we get to that crisis point. The last thing we need in the middle of a crisis of a pandemic is other crises on top of those, because people can't connect with people and others. So basically, this was the quickest win that I think I would have ever predicted. And I'm talking, so we heard mid-July, we heard from someone who said, can we start pushing for that? I basically checked in with a few people. We're like, yeah, we should push for this. We looked at the stats, and they're it's a huge percentage of people living in the inner city of Sydney. And I know it's the same for the inner city of Melbourne, of single person dwellings. And so you're talking people that are living in amazing studio or one bedroom apartments in the middle of the city, because they love going and having their breakfast and their coffee in a cafe in the morning, because they want to be able to go and hang out with friends at night, because they've got huge social circles and they love the buzz and the feel of the people around them in the city. And instead what we've got is these people now going, I would not have chosen to live in this way if I was known that I could not leave my house for these basic reasons. And so that's what needed to shift and change. Alex Greenwich and I wrote a letter to the health minister in New South Wales, pushing and urging for him to implement a singles bubble. After that, and this was what I was saying is the quickest ever, obviously there was mass mobilisation around it in terms of the Change.org petition. There was discussion online. Interestingly, a number of the key state political reporters and journalists were all living by themselves, which I think helped as well in terms of where this space pushes and how people are more interested in certain things than others. But we had planned an online action, and could I just say I'm sad that we won it so quickly, because we had planned an online Zoom Beyonce, not just the single ladies dance off action to try and mobilise around the need for a singles bubble, and we pulled it because we actually won the campaign before we could have the dance off. So what has been incredible is to hear the stories back from people in terms of the impact on their lives, which makes me feel so certain that our initial instincts on this, which is that actually this is about people's sense of community, isolation, well-being, is so critical. And I think sometimes when you've got a position where you're working so closely with the community, where you know that there is a real need, where it's based in a community interest, then the forces of good can come together and you can achieve the change. And we saw those health orders implemented and put in place relatively quickly, which was a really amazing outcome. And I think from all the feedback I'm still getting from people, really had a big change in terms of their day-to-day life, and is still doing so.
And thank you on behalf of Melanie and Jenny and others as well. Thank you on behalf of the many people who are living on their own, and many of whom will be joining us tonight. I also wanted to clarify with you, Jenny, before we move on
Yeah, please.
to Gemma and then a group discussion. So we have been talking a lot about dating and relationships here.
Yeah.
So meeting people online and then often wanting to have some kind of face-to-face interaction. So I thought, since you're part of the rule makers.
Yeah, sure. I probably am more across the health orders than others. Yes.
We have been asking these questions for the last 3 weeks. So what can you do? What can't you do? Can you meet someone, for example, who you meet online for a walk in Sydney or Melbourne right now, or a picnic, or what? Yeah, if you could just.
Okay, all right. So the first is a massive, like, imagine red lights flashing disclaimer that if you live in New South Wales, the New South Wales Police are very good at giving you fines, even if you're complying with the health advice. So I'm just going to tell you what is the health advice rules, but I'm also going to warn you that there are lots of people in the community that are getting fines, even though they're complying. So just make sure that if you're going to do this, that you've got the little bit of the New South Wales health info on your phone when you do it, and I'll share the links to that. Basically, as it stands currently, you are allowed to, in New South Wales, and I understand it's the same in Victoria, go for a walk with one other person. So if you're into dates that involve walking, that is pretty much within the rules current kind of procedure in terms of how you can go and connect up with people in the real world. New South Wales Health, interestingly, yesterday tweeted that one of the reasons for visiting someone's house is not meeting up with a stranger you've met on a dating app for a one-night stand. They literally put a tweet out about that. But you can go for a walk with another person. And just to say, I've just seen in the chat someone saying in relation to New South Wales, and I'll just give you the details about the current stuff for Victoria as well. Currently, a person can leave their house once per day for exercise, and they can do it with one other person, provided they don't travel outside of their 5-kilometre area. So I'll share these links in the chat so people can go and do it. But basically, the safest way, both in terms of COVID safety, but also in terms of the health orders, would be to be going for a walk with one other person. As of the 13th of September in New South Wales, people can also go for picnics in groups of 5. So you can be sitting down and engaging in a picnic in a group of up to 5 adults, and they don't have to be from the same household, but you do have to be vaccinated. So that's kind of the current restrictions of where it's at. It is obviously very limiting in terms of that space, but there are options through that walking option to be able to connect up with people in the real world.
Thank you. That was great to clarify. And we'll have you back on a second for a group discussion. I want to bring on Gemma now. So Gemma Gilchrist is a clinical psychologist working a lot with people in trauma. Maybe you could tell us a little of your background, but we are going to talk about dating and relationships in this time as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a clinical psychologist that works, has sort of 2 hats. One is in general psychology and people that see me for all sorts of emotional issues or family problems. And then the other hat is I see a lot of people who are physically unwell. So probably 80% of the people I see would have serious illnesses like cancer. And so I've had a sort of a different viewpoint as well, I guess, on the bubble. So part of it's from people that's been unwell, but also I see a lot of young people who've been through cancers and are keen to get back out in the dating world, are keen to, and actually even some people who have not been doing well and really need people around them. So I sort of feel like I've got a different lens from the others, but one thing I really wanted to pick up from what both Mel and Jenny said is that this COVID thing, this second lockdown especially, didn't happen in a vacuum. It's not like we were all going fantastically well and then we had to cope with the lockdown. You know, a lot of people, of course, have mental health problems or depression or anxiety or other issues bubbling along before this. And I don't know, one of the things that I've noticed, I think this second lockdown's been a bit harder on people than the first one. Actually, did you want me to sort of?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm hearing that from a lot of people, particularly on their own, saying this lockdown is harder than the last lockdown.
Yeah,
it is.
And look, one of the things, and it's interesting because one of the wonderful things that I found about telehealth that now many psychologists are doing is that we're talking to people all over the country, and certainly, you know, the people in Victoria hit it before us, but I think, look, there are all sorts of reasons, but the main things I'm noticing is that you know, people were stressed beforehand, and then this happens. You know, we'd already been 18 months of this before this current lockdown, and there's this sort of this chronic uncertainty that was happening, and I think this time people often went in thinking, okay, well, you know, it's awful, but we'll do what we did the last time. You know, we'll lock down and we'll wear our masks and we won't go, you know, we'll obey the rules and etc. And actually Delta, you know, turned out to give everyone a bit of a surprise, I think. And so then the things that people had tried before weren't working, and then often the success relied on other people doing the right thing. And of course, we know that didn't always happen, or people might have been trying to do the right thing and didn't, but whichever way, there's a lot of infringements. And so I think it started a groundswell of sort of anxiety and fear and a loss of control. And that's been a big difference this time, I think, just about the uncertainty of it all. And another thing I've really noticed is that people are just so missing. I noticed on the chat before, someone popped up about grandparents, and yeah, and people just missing grandkids or kids or people that have been overseas, or relatives that we now haven't seen for, you know, quite a, you know, a few years, or definitely many months, and people yearning for that, and yearning for cuddles and hugs and touch and kisses and all those things, romantic relationships or not, just that physical, you know, sort of being with people. And I think that's been super hard on people. And, you know, kind of, I suppose, the novelty factor of baking bread and whatever we were doing sort of wore off a bit. And people kind of got fed up about that and a bit more lonely and a bit more uncertain. So it's definitely hit people harder, I think. And that's not to mention all the people with controlling relationships or other issues they've had to juggle. So, yeah.
So we're going to talk about dating and relationships in a minute, but we talked yesterday when we were kind of preparing for this about this idea of stress boxes, which I thought was really interesting, and, you know, could be really, I mean, I'm in lockdown, I found quite helpful for myself. Can you just share how
sure. So I often talk with people, this is a sort of a general thing I talk about, but I find it helpful, this idea, this is one of those things that's weird on Zoom, but anyway, I talk about stress really being the imbalance of all the things that weigh on top of us, you know, the things like, big things like, will I get COVID? I miss people, I'm lonely, do I have enough money? And even little things that should be little, like, I don't know, I'm going to get cooked chicken for dinner or something, are not that little. If you forgot your mask, or, you know, your LGA shops, whatever, it's a pain. So things weigh on top. And the things that used to sort of balance the other end of the seesaw, like Jenny and Mel said before, going out, being vibrant, being in your community, hanging out with people, dating, whatever it is you're doing, you know, that was the counterbalance. Yeah. And so these stress boxes, you know, some of them on this part are really heavy and difficult to carry, and it's hard to put some of those things down. And so one of the things I like to think about with managing your stress is actually sort of, how can you tip the balance? So there are things here we can make lighter. So things like homeschooling, for example, anyone that's going completely bonkers trying to homeschool and trying to be a teacher as well as a, you know, fully employed person and whatever, some boxes we just got to put down, you know, or make them lighter, get someone else to help, I don't know, but we can't actually carry sort of every box. And things like, you know, I know a lot of people are now stopping watching or not watching all of the 11 o'clock, you know, updates and things. With ours, it's Gladys, but, you know, I'm sure other people have got similar, making things, you know, sort of lightening the load, so not so obsessed with every moment of what's going on. And on the other side of it, though, you know, I talk to people like, all sorts of things that we do, and I can go into this in a bit more detail if we want, but you know, connecting with nature, getting out, connecting with people, Zooming every 5 minutes like we are, managing what we're saying to ourselves and our own self-talk, you know, just trying. And I suppose one way I think about it is to say to people, when you're juggling lots of things we're juggling, all of those balls in the air, some of those balls are made of rubber and some of them are made of glass. Try not to drop the glass ones, like your health, you know, your relationships. Don't drop those, but many of the ones, you know, we think are all glass are actually rubber. Lots of the things like homeschooling, you know, are hopefully going to bounce. So I think we've got to be reasonable in these sorts of times. It was so difficult for everybody just to take the pressure off a bit.
That is good advice. I have been stressing a bit. include how much TV we're letting our kids watch.
That's right. Exactly. There's only so many things we can control.
You have to let it go. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to come at you've had some great advice, like some stuff that you've seen that your clients do in terms of successful dating this time, which we're going to come to in a minute.
Yeah,
I want to
sure.
put everyone back on to have a couple of group, I've got a few group questions and then quick Q&A. Please keep the questions coming on the Q&A. I see someone's put something in there. If you have questions for anyone on the panel tonight, please put them in the Q&A. So Mel, I'll come to you first, but please, anyone else jump in. You were advocating for the singles bubble, as was Jenny, but it came, you mentioned it came really quickly. We talked when we caught up yesterday about just the kind of mental impact of being on your own during this time and what you took out of being part of creating this campaign and what that did for you. And I just love if you could share a bit of the impact that not just the bubble had on you, but actually bringing people together and any advice that you can share from that.
Yeah, look, it was really wonderful on a number of levels, all about connecting with others, I think, on a really sort of base level, I was connecting a lot with the person who had led the campaign in Victoria, Dr. Jen Ford. So she was really helping me out with questions that I thought might stump me in the media, telling me about how it had gone in Melbourne, assuring me that it had been safe and successful, because like Jenny said, that was a real worry. Was this going to be safe? Or were we going to be, in a month's time or 2 months' time, were we going to see a bunch of cases that could be directly linked to the singles bubble? It was a real concern. Mm-hmm. So that was wonderful. And then there was the interest that everybody seemed to have in it. Lots of media wanted to talk about it. And so therefore I had to make sure that I was like dolled up and the house was tidy, and I was, all these things that contribute, I'm sure Gemma can speak to your self-esteem,
Right.
And then of course, when it actually went through, like Jenny was saying before, that she's had lots of reports back of people talking about what it's been like for them. I've had a lot of people that I know and don't know contact me to tell me, about the night they're having with their single buddy person, or I've had photos of people in a room watching a movie together and things like that. So it's just the entire thing really lifted me out of something, I felt like I was actually going a bit downhill before. Gemma was talking about how this second lockdown has been more difficult for people, and I was certainly one of those people. And just being able to engage with my community and to feel like I was doing something positive and something that was contributing in some small way, really was just wonderful. And I've just been my normal self ever since. So if you can find a cause to get on to, I'd recommend it. Find something that you want to change and try and change it. It's really, beautifully galvanizing.
Thanks.
It's a nice job to have, Mel.
I can
every
imagine.
day.
Yeah, I can imagine. It would be the really lovely part of working in politics, I would imagine, is that kind of ability to see things through, to actually change and to connect with people. Does it make up for the trolling? I'm not sure.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. But hey, it's like there are good bits about it. But just you saying stories, I just got to interrupt for a second to say, like, I have been getting the most lovely messages, like direct messages on Twitter, messages on my Instagram, emails from people saying, oh my gosh, Jenny, I just had like donuts and a cup of tea with my friend, or actually they contact me about something else and they're like, just by the way, I live by myself and I am just like loving the singles bubble and so thankful for it. Like, people are just sharing the most appreciative messages for how and what it means. And I think this is the lesson we got from Victoria, is very much that was crucial for people. And I think, given all the stubbornness and the horrific sort of, pointless state rivalry and all of this crap that's been going on, which nobody needs right now, actually, that was amazing to be able to have learned from the serious impacts on people's mental health in Victoria and say, actually, we can get this done and copy what's been going on down there here in New South Wales, so people don't have to go through that pain first. It's great.
It was wonderful.
Thank you, Mel. And Jenny, I just want to follow on for the next point. Something we were
Yeah.
talking about yesterday was, at the moment we're still in lockdown and there's some uncertainty about the future. But you mentioned that you and other lawmakers are starting to think about, well, what does the future actually look like? What is the kind of pathway out of this? But what does the future look like, particularly for single people going forward? And how do you think this is going to impact just our cities and the way that we interact with each other in the long term?
I think it's going to make a huge impact, and I think I'm a representative of an area that is like hyper inner city area, but I notice on the chat there's people zooming in from regional areas, and I want to acknowledge how tough it is in regional areas, because so many of the networks that I have and connections that I have with people in diverse communities across the country and are in regional and remote areas, they rely so much on being able to travel into cities or to long distances to be able to connect with their communities and their people. And so I think it is, I just want to say that is also an incredibly tough time for people to be doing in those regional areas as well. What does it look like? I think if you go to look in any park now, in any piece of green space, people are doing things in their community that you would never have seen happen before in parks and spaces. And it's amazing, right? It is truly phenomenal to see sort of, or people are practicing their dance moves. Other people have got a full yoga Pilates set up just by themselves. There's two guys down at my local park that literally bring their full dumbbell weight set combo and set up for a morning of gym routine. People are wandering. I take my plate with my sandwich onto the park to go and sit, which probably before you'd be like sitting at your desk eating. So I think people are doing things and using our public spaces more. And so I think we need to look at what does that mean for recreational spaces and public spaces in our city, because sadly the reality of coming out of this current lockdown is not going to look normal for us. Like, we're still going to have restrictions on how many people can be around each other, on indoor spaces, on those kind of things. So I think when we're looking at that, it's like, what does it look like to actually set up what are kind of intimate and private spaces within our public parks and public areas? What does it look like to set up areas where you can actually sort of go, oh yeah, I know that I can go here and have a relatively intimate conversation with someone and not be surrounded by 85,000 other people on a big open oval? What does it look like to do that when the weather's not so good? So have we got enough outdoor public spaces that are actually covered, that are actually sheltered from weather, those kinds of things? Do we have, practical things like, bathrooms, public bathrooms in public spaces, those kinds of things that you can't just walk into the pub now and go to the toilet if you live in the inner city, because the pubs are all shut to people. So all of these things I think have to be factored in. There's another element which I think is key, and I think it's about how we deal with people coming and going to our homes and interacting in that space, because it's very clear from all of the health advice so far that having people in their homes as visitors is a high risk for COVID, and it's one of the most horrific things about this virus, is that people like welcoming people into their homes. Mel, you're talking about it in terms of the connection you have with people, that changes the dynamic of what your home's like. It's heartbreaking for me to not be able to have family and friends in my house and in my home, cook for people, that kind of thing. And I think we need to think about, what does that look like if we can only do that in more public spaces, and how do we get that sense of intimacy and private connection with people if we're not doing it so much in our own homes? And that's a challenge, right? Because often that involves huge amounts of money, and not everyone has access to those luxuries.
Do you think this is a long-term change then?
Look, I'm not wanting to make anyone feel shitter. That's not my job. But I actually think it's really important to face the reality that, as it currently stands, we need people to get vaccinated. We need to recognise that. But if we're opening back up with less capacity in venues and less kind of presence and connecting with things. I don't think we're all going to be heaving on top of each other on sweaty dance floors anytime in the near future. Sadly, as much as that is what I would like to be doing.
I didn't mean to make you feel shitter.
Can I add something to that as well, Rebecca? I'd be really interested to see, in going forward, whether this also changes the makeup of homes and of single occupancy homes. I know, like myself, I've been sort of joking for years. I've lived alone for a long time. I've sort of been joking for years about like a little commune with friends, which is basically like a share house, you know, really it's a share house with a few extra bathrooms. And I wonder how much more we'll actually see of that, because I tell you, if I had any of my friends seriously take up the offer, you know what I mean? Like seriously say, yeah, I'm interested in this too, and I'm willing to, you know, put this amount of money in and, you know, commit to this kind of, to trying to sort of live a life together afterwards, I think I'd be really seriously considering it. And I know a lot of other people that I know would be doing the same thing. So that's another thing I'll be really interested to see as well. And in new apartment blocks that are being built and the like, whether we're going to see more communal living too after this, because it's been really difficult on a lot of people.
A bit of Melrose Place-esque kind of private space, shared space vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's my dream. Yeah. I keep
sorry for all those people that I just totally aged myself by using that as the reference.
I keep eyeing off old mansions around the city, thinking if only I could just get a rich investor to invest in communal housing for people. I think I feel like it would be the way forward for a lot of social cohesion as well. And, you know, we have built, Jenny, you were talking about people going to the park and, you know, seeing all these things in the park we don't usually see. We don't usually see so many people in the park, which is wonderful.
Totally.
You know, we don't that's actually something that personally I don't want to end when the pandemic does, because it's a beautiful, you know, it feels like being part of a community for once, whereas usually we're all off in our own little boxes doing our own little things. So that's something I hope changes into the future too as a result of this.
I've got a couple of questions for Gemma, and then I'm going to come to questions from the audience. So please keep your questions coming in. So Gemma, when we were talking yesterday, you saying, you know, in your practice, you're seeing examples of clients who are looking for relationships, who are doing some really creative things right now. And you think this is going to be a long-term shift. So I thought it would be awesome if you could share some of those things that you've seen with our audience.
Yes, it's interesting actually, because it's
what advice would you be giving them?
I was thinking as the others were talking, it's a bit like sort of necessity is the mother of invention, and some of us, you know, in New South Wales have done a couple of lockdowns, and some of the poor people of Victoria, it's the, you know, the lockdown that keeps on giving. And I think in all those places people have learned different things. And what I've, you know, some of the cool things that people have been telling me just over the months, I suppose, is putting themselves way out of their comfort zone. And so normally that, you know, they might have gone dating, you know, meet with someone, go and have a drink, whatever. And now they basically sort of schedule in, almost like, not Zoom interview sounds a bit awful, but they kind of, you know, schedule in people that they're going to talk to, couple on a Saturday, you know, couple on whatever, and they're just kind of chatting away. And some people that's a date type of thing, other people it's a friendship thing. So they literally eat dinner together, go get pizzas, eat dinner together. People that I'm seeing are watching movies together, so they go to the movies, but they just actually happen to be, you know, watching the same kind of thing or watching a show and then chatting about it afterwards. Some people, one person I was talking to just recently, I think this was I'm sure this was a Melbourne person, because I was trying to remember this after we spoke, and there was an online comedy festival, and they both she bought tickets to this thing, but it was all virtual. And then there was in the chat thing, you know, just like we're doing now with the chat popping up, and they clearly, you know, started to think, oh, you're pretty cute, whatever. And then they contacted the organizers afterwards, and then were able to swap numbers and literally met that way. So this is someone that's like only met, this is probably about 2 weeks ago I was talking to. Another person, and quite a few people have done this. This is up here in Sydney, but do wine and cheese evenings. So you can order, look, I'm completely loving them, but anyway, they turn up on the doorstep and there's your wine and cheese, and you do your chat, and there's people flirting away on the side and chatting away. And whether it's relationships or not, it's just people connecting, having a laugh, talking to other people, you know. And I think it's one of the things I always talk to people that I see with illness about this, and with living with uncertainty. And one of the things about living with uncertainty is to realize that we might not have done this version before of lockdown and trying to negotiate these, but most people have done uncertainty. You know, they've changed careers, or they've changed partners, or they've changed jobs, or they've been unwell, or most of us have something we can draw on where we've had to manage uncertainty before. And I think we kind of shouldn't forget that. And And another thing that's popped into my head, actually, someone did a cartoon drawing course, and they met some, it was a sort of met friends or whatever, both doing the cartoon drawing course, and they were drawing not cartoon horses, animated, that's the word I'm looking for, animated horses. So I think all these things you never would have thought of, that it's bringing out a creativity in people. And I suppose, it's about sort of, rather than waiting till it's all perfect and normal again, which it's clearly not going to be for a long time, is about kind of just rolling with those punches a bit and working out, okay, it's not perfect, but how are we going to take sort of imperfect action, and how do we do that? I suppose that's what people are telling me anyway.
That is very good advice. I'm seeing people on the chat saying that they have been on wine, like virtual wine tastings and meeting friends. I think that's an awesome thing to do. Like do things where you're doing the same thing with someone.
Same thing. And
like,
you're interested.
Yeah, it's like, and it seems like it'd be a great way to meet people, but also, connect with people with good data.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are, things I'm reading for overseas, and I don't think this has taken off as much in Australia, maybe, but at online book clubs and stuff like that, where and people are just connecting, doing this exact kind of thing, where people, just a whole group of people, chat to each other about stuff and connect. I think it's
I guess this is a good example of that, right?
Yeah.
The other interesting thing that I got from our chat yesterday is we were talking about, well, can people actually form really like solid connections online? Because I'm just imagining my dating journey. I did all the phone calls, which we've talked about on these other sessions, and then I'd go on the face-to-face dates, and I liked getting to know someone's energy and giving them a hug. Do you think, because how as a psychologist how connections form, do you think you can form close connections online?
And look, caveat that I'm not a dating expert, but absolutely, I think we form, different. Humans are fantastic at trying to, we naturally want to form relationships with other people. We naturally want to connect, and we do it in whatever way we can. So, you'll see kids do it that are non-verbal. You'll see people that speak different languages try and do it. As humans, we try and say, what are our common ground? And I think one of the things I was thinking about before was, although this, was not for the better, it was for the worse. But one of the reasons, online romance scams took off was because, people will get to a depth of connection far quicker than they might do face to face. They'll listen to different things, they'll pick up different cues, and it allowed relationships to develop far more quickly than they ordinarily would, And so now, okay, fine, that's not a great example of it, but it shows how, when you want to, you can form relationships. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be a barrier. Like, even for us as clinicians, having to get our head around doing telehealth and everybody we see is on a screen, which feels bizarre as a psychologist, missing half the non-verbal cues and things. But actually, doing it online is way easier than doing by phone. Doing in person, yes, it's better, but often once you've met once, you're fine online. So even people it's my job to do, to try and connect with others, it's you can do it online. So I think it's one of those things where, is it perfect? No. Look, is it worse? I don't know, but it's different. And if we just rather than thinking till it's perfect, taking imperfect action, but you kind of getting on with it. Yeah.
You also mentioned it's not the first time in history, wartime, for example.
That's right. Wartime, letters in wartime. It's not like we've never met this before, We've met it under a different disguise. Yeah. But all those times and back in history, people have been forming relationships and connections, forever, really. Yeah. And so I think the way we do it, the value, the idea that we want to make connections, doing what matters, doesn't really change. The way we do it, whether we've got the internet, whether we've got the telephone, whether we've got, I don't know, anything, letters that take 3 months to arrive or more. We're wanting to do it forever and ever and ever. So I don't think we should necessarily get all caught up on the mode by which we do it. We've just got to get out of our comfort zone sometimes and give it a crack, Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go to some questions from the audience. So first up, there's a lot of questions around the singles bubble. So I'm just going to put it to Jenny, kind of a rapid fire clarification, really. So one is, how does a single bubble actually work? Is there a difference between Sydney and regional New South Wales for single bubble rules? So can you just share? And there's another question also is around how far you can travel Another one is if you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, do they need to live within your 5-kilometre radius?
Okay, great. So I'm gonna cheat. I preempted this question. I'm pasting into the chat. This is the New South Wales health information in relation to the singles bubble. So basically, if a person lives in an area of concern, then the nominated person must be in 5 kilometres. And I just want to give a shout out. There's been lots of chat, 2 bits of chat. One about people in Victoria. I'm talking from a New South Wales perspective, and I don't mean any disrespect. I appreciate that it is way tougher in Victoria and how long you guys have been locked down for. And I just want to acknowledge that and say that I'm trying to keep it positive by talking about nice park things. And I know Mel was as well, but like there's no, like it's also really shit. And I think it's okay for us to acknowledge that as well. So I just want to say that. I also want to say that people in New South Wales that are in the areas of concern that are totally have been restricted, that are restricted to curfews, that are restricted to exercise limits, like, and now thankfully that is going to be removed. Like it's removed, but these things are really full on. So I just thought it's good to acknowledge people where they're at, Rebecca, because I think that's some people are not doing it as easy as we are, and we're doing it tough in the easier areas of the lockdown spectrum, if you like. The other, in terms of the difference between New South Wales and Victoria, I'm not specifically across the Victorian details, so I don't know what the process is for registering a nominated person, but in New South Wales you only need to register a nominated person if you're living in an area of concern. Otherwise you have to make a commitment to knowing that you have a nominated person, but you don't have to formally nominate that person with government.
Okay, and that is someone that you can have at your house or you can go to their house. But if you're meeting somebody who is not your nominated person, you can still meet someone who's not your nominated person.
You can go for a walk or exercise with one other person in the park. Okay. Yeah, or on the street or in a field or wherever you may be.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
And they need to be, if you're not in an area of concern, they need to be in 5 kilometres of your home or within your local government area.
Okay. What about, does your girlfriend or boyfriend have to be in your local government area?
No.
Okay.
That's not perfect.
Yeah.
Just before anyone blasts me, I might be the one sharing this information with you, but I am not in the government and I am not making the health orders.
Okay, but it's better than it's
but I'm glad to be absolutely sharing this information. It's what we do every day with our local community.
No, thank you. And I think, like, you can see from the reaction on the chat that there's a lot of people who are very grateful that this work has been done for them. So thank you, Jenny and Mel. Narelle has a question, which I think is a good one for probably for Gemma actually. Would you go do a walk for a first date now? So this question came from last week's webinar where we had Trudy Gilbert on, who was talking about like what should a first date look like. And Mel, you might want to talk to this as well, because I know you're someone who's dating at the moment. And her advice was that a first date should be something romantic, you know, go out, meet for a drink, get dressed up, you know, have some dinner, make it a romantic night. But that is just not the reality at the moment. We don't know if that's going to be the reality for some time. So what do we say to Narelle? I guess Gemma first maybe. Yeah. Do you do a walk for a first date now, or do you wait until we can meet for a drink and dinner?
My feeling is that for these things, I think if you put too much pressure on yourself, it gets harder and harder, and we're better off to just kind of meet and do something. And if that at the moment is a walk and that's what it looks like, then that's what we do. And waiting till it's kind of perfect and we can meet up and go for drinks, and which just shifts the goalpost, I think is too much. And actually it just reminded me, I saw that on the chat someone said about the golf range, and someone I was talking to went, I don't think it was a first date, but went a couple of dates into a golf range, and someone else on a first date, I think this is very brave, did a shared workout session. So I don't know where they put the cameras, but whatever, but they were in their garage and the other person was in their garage. And so they were separate doing a workout. And I think it's just, for them, it was quirky and it was daft, and that's them. So I think it's sort of got to suit your personality and as well. But yeah, I don't think we should overthink it. Overthinking is going to be, you know, make us even more miserable, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I was on, I mean, I know last week I spoke about how I did prefer first dates that were, you know, somewhat romantic, where we could meet and stuff. And but if I was dating now, if I was on my 138 date mission and I wanted to find a partner, I would be absolutely on Zoom all the time, and I would be doing walks. I'd be doing whatever I possibly could, I think, and trying to make it as romantic as you can. But But I mean, still, I think the old advice we've been talking about for weeks is that it is still a numbers game to some extent, and you can at this moment kind of get through more numbers.
Yeah.
Getting outside of it. Mel, what do you think? And are you dating at the moment? I'm sure
Well,
you're interested in that.
It's funny. I was at the beginning of lockdown, and I remember at the beginning, just before lockdown happened, someone asked me to go for a walk, and I thought, I don't want to go for a walk. I don't want to, like, it was such a definitive thing, because I thought my safe space, like, I know that my safe space, my most attractive space is sitting across from somebody having a beer. I'm really comfortable, or a drink or a coffee. I'm really comfortable. I know I can talk with them. I know I can ask them questions, all that kind of stuff. I don't feel comfortable walking around. Or anyway, this date then said to me, this is what I loved. I said, well, how would you feel about, doing a yoga class or going for a swim? And I thought, wow, this guy must be crazy. Like, who would ever agree to go for a swim or do a yoga class for a first date? How horrific. But now, all these months into lockdown, I'm kind of thinking that I should open my mind a little bit more. I mean, I've actually just deleted all the apps, and I'm not doing any sort of active searching for dating. I mean, I've still got a couple of people I'm texting and the like, but I don't, I've just kind of shut it off a bit. But this conversation and the lead up to this conversation has made me think maybe I should be getting onto the Zoom stuff, because I mean, this is kind of like, we could be having a little drink or having a coffee, maybe opening my mind to it, because I have been astonished at the amount of people who have either shared that they've, they're in their 1 year anniversary with someone, or they're having a baby with somebody that they met through lockdown. I think, how do these people do it? I thought we're all on hold, but we're not all on hold. So maybe it's time just to like open my mind a little bit to it. Like, this is very encouraging to be more open-minded about it.
Can I just say one thing quickly too? I just, when you said that, a lot of people say on Zoom, they're telling me they're actually more comfortable. You're in your own environment. You're sort of drinking your whatever you want to drink, you're eating whatever you want to eat, you chat, and if they're really boring, you're finished. Like,
yeah, you got the lovely the sheen that I'm hoping like that all cosmetic surgeons and laser clinics learn how to do a Zoom filter treatment when we get out of this, because we all look terrific in it. So yes, Gemma, what good thinking.
Can I just say, Rebecca, the other thing that people I think it's also about the joint activity, like chatting to people as well about what makes them feel like the most normal in terms of a social interaction is actually like the things that feel a bit the strangest. So people have been feeding back to us things like joining like a trivia thing where someone else is hosting it. Yeah. So you're interacting with someone, but you don't have to like run the kind of conversation in an awkward kind of stilted Zoom way. Or you can get these amazing kind of, craft packs or paint and sip packs done to your house or whatever. So people get the same thing, and then you can do it on Zoom, but someone else is leading it, or there's an activity you're doing. I do think that shifts the dynamic a bit in terms of just feeling a little bit more like you're out and about having an interaction, because it's very rare in a social interaction that you're just focused on one person like this, right? There's always people walking past, or you're going up to the order food, or the waiter's coming over, or you're going past others. So I think having that as well can make it feel more like a normal social interaction.
Yeah. And good for your, sense of connection as well. Just meeting new people and fun.
Totally.
There's a couple of questions, Gemma, I think are super important. I'd love to put to you.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
So one is from an anonymous Tinny, who I think has been dating a lot up until this point. So she says, or he says, COVID has heightened my stress that I'm going to be alone forever, and I'm hyper-focused on being in a relationship. Is there any tips to balance panic dating and finding the right person for me?
Oh yeah, can I just say that absolutely, he or she is absolutely not alone. And lots of people that I've been speaking to, particularly because I see a lot of people who are physically unwell, are worried that kind of time's ticking away, and they're watching the sound in the hourglass or whatever, and are freaking out about that. And I think it's particularly bad at a time when we don't necessarily have all those other distractions in life, and we're overthinking a lot of things.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the things I always say is your mind will get good at what you practice. You know, if we practice tennis all day, we will get good at it. If we practice, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, and you know, COVID's going to take away all my dreams and happiness, we're going to get good at it.
Yeah.
And who knows if it's truthful or not? That person doesn't know the answer to the question. I don't know. No one knows. But what we do know is that is a strongly unhelpful way to think, completely understandable. And you know, I'm not you know, taking the mickey out of it. Of course, we think that, and they're not alone. But it just gets super, super unhelpful.
And how do you change your thought? How do you change it?
Yeah, look, I think it's sort of it's probably a bit of a bigger conversation. And the first thing I'd say is if it's someone that's got sort of pre-existing anxiety stuff and it's rising like a tide anyway, and the flood, you know, and the rivers coming up, we only need a bit more rainfall to flood. And so sometimes for people that are getting really overly vigilant about those sorts of thoughts, it actually helps to get, you know, to go and see a psychologist, to go and get some mental health, to learn how to kind of manage those thoughts, because there's different ways to manage them depending on what the thoughts are. And there's actually really good self-help stuff out there too. So if they didn't want to see someone, what a really good book that I often recommend is Russ Harris, The Happiness Trap.
Yeah.
And that's got really good self-help ways to manage thinking. But yeah, I think really it's, I forgot what the original question was about now. The yeah, how to sort of manage the thinking. Look, I think to be honest, I'd need to do a bit more about the thinking. I can't really give a quick response to it, except to say that over focusing on whether or not happiness is going to evade any of us is super unhappy, because it you know, it's super unhelpful. Yeah.
Another question for you is, how can I form a close connection and not just end up with a pen pal on Bumble or RSVP or any of these apps? How can you go from, and I don't know if Mel or Jenny have anything to add on this as well, but how do you go from being a nice chat to closer?
Being in the friend zone or whatever versus something more. And look, maybe I'll turn that over to one of the others in a sec, but I think actually just in any relationship, we start with the chit chat with any friendship, and then we ask someone to do something more, and we see if there's shared ground, and then we spend a bit more time and see if there's shared ground on that. And I think just because we've got this unusual way of meeting that's online or in writing, we still need to do the same thing. So still need to ask them in more depth about things, or finding out about political views, or finding out, you know, asking questions, finding out more about that person, I think is, that's important.
So I know we've spoken in the other webinars about kind of sharing vulnerabilities and building trust over time. So that's how close connections form. So, you know, you share something, you're a little afraid to share, and then they share something they're a little afraid to share, and you build that trust,
and you build the intimacy. Well, I had an interesting conversation yesterday with someone, and she was really freaked out because she said, look, what everyone wants to know now, this had never occurred to me, but what people want to know first off is their Instagram account. And so what they then do is they hop on each other's Instagram account and use that to get a quick idea, apparently, of what everybody looks like, and then make judgments on that. And then the guy just ghosted her and left. And you think that's kind of confronting, isn't it? Because people think they think they're looking to look at Instagram to get an idea of someone's intimate, you know, layers of their life, but they're not. And the only way to really get that is actually to communicate and share those layers and build trust.
Yeah. Look, I think it's really important in instances like that to show boundaries. So I've written a lot about my personal life for various publications over the years, and there's a lot about me online. And so when I date, I don't date with my own name, like I just date with my nickname. And when somebody asks me what my real name, which rarely happens, but they might ask you full name because they want to do a Google search on you, I just say, no, I'm sorry. I think it's better that we get to know each other from, you know, each other. And most people are really cool with that. And the other thing I would say to the ghosting, and we're running out of time, so I won't be long with this, to the not becoming pen pals, is just be really careful about who it is that you commit your heart to before you've spent time with them in real life. And I know that's difficult at the moment, but you could class this as real life, I guess, because at least you're seeing each other. I just have had a lot of friends in the past be very, very upset by people nicking off after they've been texting them for a few days. And I kind of think we need to get real a bit with dating. And we don't owe each other anything in the dating world, particularly if we haven't met. You know, if we haven't met or spent time together. And I just think it's really careful to think about what those boundaries are. If somebody's not giving you back what you need in a text exchange or a Zoom exchange or whatever, you don't have to hang around. There's plenty more fish in the sea. There's, as you've shown, Rebecca, there's at least one for every week. So
for multiple years.
Exactly, for multiple years. So it's not as if you know you need to be like committing or worrying about people early on or before they've given you anything back to sort of be able to commit to that. Sorry, I mean,
I will totally agree with that. I mean, my 138 date mission that I went on, I mean, there was many men that I met, I met online and then on the phone and then in person. And it didn't really matter because I would meet someone in person and they would turn out to be shallow and then disappear just as the same as they do online. I mean, I think it's even more difficult when you've met someone and you've invested a whole evening with them and then you never hear from them again. But I mean, the way that I got through it was there was many more out there. And I believed that I would find someone who's a match for me and who was looking for me. And I just had to keep looking and not get too worried about, you know, if they disappear like that, or if they trail your Instagram and they're not interested, then they're obviously not the right match. So it's fine. Like, can move on and find someone who is the right match. And I think that's probably where we're going to end it because we are a couple of minutes over time. That was a really insightful and lovely discussion. Thank you so much. It was great for our last event. It was a bit different to our other events. Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you, Mel. Thank you for the work that you've done on the singles bubble. I know a lot of people here will be appreciative of it. And thank you, Gemma, for joining and for all your insights as well. You were fabulous to have on. So thank you very much. And thank you to my lovely partner, Rod, who's been doing the tech and staying up late doing this for all of our 4 events. We will put the video up and I'll email a link to you later in the week. Thank you to RSVP for helping put this together. I'm sure if I was dating now, I would be using the RSVP just because it is the dating site for people who are a bit more serious and who want to express more about their passions and what they're looking for than just 140 characters or whatever you can put on some of the other dating apps. So thank you to them, and it's been an awesome community. I'm really going to miss these events. I hope we can do something else in the future soon, and I guess that's it.